Hello and welcome to the Brooklyn Rail's 1031st New Social Environment. I'm Chloe Stagaman, Director of Programs here at the Rail, and I have the extreme joy of being your MC today for a conversation featuring Guadalupe Maravilla and Eugenie Tsai. And now I'll introduce today's guest and host. Combining sculpture, painting, performative acts, and installation, Guadalupe Maravilla grounds his transdisciplinary practice in activism and healing. Engaging a wide variety of visual cultures, Maravilla's work is autobiographical, referencing his unaccompanied, undocumented migration to the United States due to the Salvadoran Civil War. His work is in the permanent collections of many international institutions, and he has received numerous awards and fellowships, most recently the Robert Rauschenberg Award this year. And our host today, Eugenie Tsai, is a curator and writer based in New York. After 16 years, she recently stepped down from her position as the John and Barbara Vogelstein Senior Curator of Contemporary Art at the Brooklyn Museum. During those years, she shaped the contemporary collection there and organized around 40 loan and collection exhibitions, among them Oscar Yeho, East of Sun, West of Moon, and Guadalupe Maravilla, Tierra Blanca Joven. And with that, I'm going to pass it over to Eugenie.
Thank you, Chloe. I'm excited to be in conversation today with Guadalupe. I'm a little bit nervous, but looking forward to it. And this is on the occasion of his current exhibition at PPOW, which translated into English is, "If you don't heal today, you'll heal tomorrow." Guadalupe, one of the things that's really impressed me about your work is the way you have used your life experience as the beginnings of your practice. There have been traumas in your life, and the traumas have provided a point of departure for what's become an incredibly generous practice. In our current climate of anger and grievance, it is amazing to see the way in which you have transformed these experiences in your life into something that is generous, kind, and caring. It's so remarkable, and it's something I respect deeply. So I thought we could start looking at your exhibition, in particular, two works called Disease Throwers, because they center healing in your practice. The Disease Throwers are the two large sculptures in the center of the room. One is a kind of purplish color, and the other is I don't know how, this kind of teal green. Your Disease Throwers were the first works that I became familiar with. And I was really fascinated by the fact that there were sculptures, but they were also sound generators and even altars. So I wonder if you could speak a little bit about how you came to make these.
Yeah, hello, Jeannie. Thank you for being in this conversation with me, first of all, and to the Brooklyn Rail for hosting all of this, and to everyone that's here. I'm just very honored to be able to share my work with you all, just in general, having shows, but also like being here and go deeper into it, because there's so many layers to everything that I do. And yeah, so these disease throwers are, like you said, Jeannie, it's like they're to me they're healing instruments. They're shrines, they're sculptures, and they helped me produce like these ceremonies that we did. Like I was saying earlier, I just came back from we did a cancer ceremony just like an hour and a half ago at the gallery. And without these sculptures, those ceremonies don't happen. So it's like really important for me to keep making them. And they're a big part of my practice, and these are two very different ones. Like the purple one we're looking at here, it has like that chair was actually made in Salvador. I designed it, and I had it fabricated in El Salvador. And then once I arrived to my studio, I was able to transform it into what you see here. And the material that you see in a lot of the work, like this is my signature material that I've kind of been, as a student at BFA student a long time ago, I started putting things in the microwave for fun. And some things like really didn't work out and some things did. And eventually I put like 4 or 5 ingredients, which I can't talk about because it's top secret. So I'm not going to tell you guys. But it's like had the right combination of things, went in there, and I was like, wow, in the future, this is going to be a sculpture. And I started exploring, and eventually they became part of the skin of the sculptures.
So this is that material. It looks very organic, and I know it's a secret recipe that you won't share with anyone. But this one in particular looks like a living thing. I mean, it's a chair and it makes a reference to the human body, but it also seems to have a life of its own. And in this case, I've never seen you use a disease thrower in quite this way, by using it almost as really an altar that holds this two-part painting, a diptych, which seems dedicated to a particular individual. First of all, maybe we could talk first a little about your retablo paintings. This is an example of that, which has an image and text. And what is the title of this work? It has really, let's see.
El Brujo is called.
Which is a healer, right? Or
no, it's more like a
shaman,
like the witch, more like the witch, like the male witch character, El Brujo. So basically, like, I guess to talk about in general what my retablo practice is like, and traditionally retablos came from Europe, from Italy and Spain to the Americas. And in Europe, I guess traditionally they were made to their devotional paintings. And like something went, like, for example, I always talk about this example of like, if a house burnt down and the chickens were saved, they would go to the local retablo painter because they were everywhere. And they would make a painting to say thank you to the Virgin Mary or to God or whoever for saving the chickens. So when this tradition came to I guess to Latin America, it was embraced and turned into something very different. And even Frida Kahlo was really inspired by this kind of folky way of painting.
So it's kind of a folk tradition of
yeah, I know
painting.
exactly. Yeah. So in Mexico, in El Salvador, I don't think there's many. I mean, not that I know of. It's probably something that doesn't even exist anymore. It kind of something that a lot of these traditions are becoming extinct in our countries, unfortunately. But so a lot of the big part of my practice is to retrace my migration route. And I go back to, originally I started going back to Central America and Mexico, and I went to those lands that I crossed when I was a little kid, when I was undocumented. I was displaced, I was separated from my family. So I part of my whole healing process was to go back to these places, and be in that land and just confront these spaces. Going as an adult, as a US citizen, right? And that was part of my healing process, my healing journey. And then eventually I started bringing back objects from there, right? Like, boom, I found this little rock, I'll bring that, and became part of my shrine. And then I found this little like object, and that became part of my shrine. And then eventually the shrine got too big and I was like, why am I going to keep all these things? And then I was like, you know what, I'm just going to put them in my sculptures. And then I started making the disease throwers, and then there was an array of objects started coming with me. But I'm very selective about my objects because I think of animism, I think of energy. I believe that, like, like if you buy um like a new sneaker, for example, like that has a particular smell, right? And or if you buy like just a old fork in the antiques market, that has particular energy because it's been used so many times, right?
Oh,
So
right.
I think of the energy of the objects. So when I'm selecting objects, I go into these markets in Latin America, and sometimes I look at a million objects. My eye scans through a million objects in a matter of like 7 hours, and sometimes I come back with like a little plastic toy or like a little rock, and sometimes I come out with like a whole carload of things, right?
So, so what do they speak to you in some way? How do you know when it's right? How do you know
Um,
when that object
it's,
goes home with you?
yeah, so it's all about intuition and feeling the energy of things. And I tend to do that with everything I do in my life, as far as making decisions, the people that I interact with, and how much energy I give to certain things. So I'm just kind of just like feeling my intuition, and I felt like that was always one of my strengths. But now, like it's become sharper as I'm older, the older that I'm getting, because I have more experience with life and just with objects in general. So now I can go through. People hate going to the markets with me because we're looking at a million objects. I'm just like really fast, like wait, slow down. So I constantly have to slow down for people that go to these markets with me. But it's just like the experience, of being in these spaces. So going back to the chair, so in these markets is where I found the retablo painters. And I've been making dozens of these paintings with a father and son that sell their work in the market, and they sell their own work, but they're there like the traditional retablo painters of Europe that you can go there and you have something like if you want a devotional painting from your own experience, they just make it for you and you put it in your house. So that's what they do in Mexico. So when I went to them, I was like, originally I told them my story and they just made the whole thing for me. Um,
Oh, wow.
that's how it started. And then after that, I was like, what if I just give you a design digital sketch, the whole composition with my colors and everything? Would you be able to make it for me? And he said, yeah. So now I send him digital files of everything that I want, and then we go back on WhatsApp 100 times. Oh, in the beginning, we used to go back, but now we're so synchronized, like we barely go over them now. He knows exactly what I want. And now his father, he's a third generation retablo painter, and Danielle is a fourth generation retablo painter. And they both kind of, yeah, I commissioned them to make my paintings for me. And the thing is that I could actually paint myself, but the whole point of this is to create this microeconomy. Danielle's wife is going through brain cancer right now, and all the work that I'm giving him is helping her pay for the medical expenses of her surgery. And myself, I'm going to start painting very soon my own work, but I think it's like really important to not just help Danielle, but also kind of still feedback, like give support, like these kind of practices that are kind of almost near extinction in Latin America, because he actually told me during the pandemic business was so bad for him that he probably would have stopped painting and would have had to get a regular job to feed his family.
Hmm.
So I'm really happy that for now I've been able to keep him going. Um,
So this
so
is a true collaboration, and right? And because I noticed that some of these have little initials. They
yeah,
are
he
signed.
signs them. He signs them. Yeah, the compositions and the colors and the stories are all mine. I'm the author, but yeah, they actually work in making the paintings themselves. But this is what they do for everyone. This is kind of like their practice. They customize paintings for people, but usually they tell me it's easier to work with me because I just give them exactly what I want. Most people are just like, oh, this is my story. They gotta think and they have to figure out what elements to put in there for people. But yeah, I just like lay it out very straight. And in some cases, I make the father and son, and I make both paintings, and you can see the same exact composition by two different hands, and you see the difference. And they sign them in the bottom. Um,
Uh-huh.
so it's like really a beautiful, yeah, it's a beautiful relationship that I have with them. So okay, so going back to the chair,
Oh, wait, can I ask you about the text here? Because, of
yeah.
course, reading the text, which is so powerfully
Mm.
moving, and looking at the image are quite an experience. And I'm wondering if you also give them the text, which they transcribe onto the painting.
Yeah, no, that's all my text. Yeah, yeah. I
And do
give
you
them.
paint that in later, or do they paint it?
So they make the painting first. No, no. When I send them the entire composition, I also send them the text
Okay.
at the same time. Yeah, yeah. So then and yeah, and sometimes there's like a little typos here and there, and then sometimes I leave them, sometimes I take them off because like they don't speak any English and they're writing in English, they're just copying. But that's part of the work. Yeah. And now some of them are in Spanish and some of them are in English. In the gallery, there's a little QR code on the side that you can scan. It'll give you the translation.
Yeah, that
For
was
either
very
or.
considerate.
Yeah, yeah,
Yes.
because it's like I don't want to lose that. I don't want to lose the story in translation. So that's really important. Um,
So then
okay,
the
so she,
material of the frames, the material of the frames and the material in that purple disease thrower, are that
oh, the chair.
organic? The chair, are that organic? I don't know how to describe it, spiky, it seems to be almost a living thing. And you talk about animism and about how objects hold energy. And I just wonder about your use of materials, this particular material, and then you can see in this image these sculptures on the left hanging on the wall, which are backpacks carved in volcanic stone. And then the other disease thrower is made in bronze. So I'm wondering if metal, volcanic rock, and this your concocted organic material have different properties to you and are appropriate for particular things. Can you comment on that?
Yeah, no, absolutely, absolutely. Yeah, so for the volcanic rocks, as a kid in El Salvador, I was really connected to the volcanoes. I think we have over 30 volcanoes in El Salvador, something really for a tiny little country. That's an extreme amount of volcanoes. So I actually climbed a bunch of volcanoes as a kid, and as well as a teenager in El Salvador and other places as well. But also if you really look at the map, I have a show right now at Cornell, and we have a map of Latin America, of American continent, North and South. And actually, if you really trace the migration route, that's happening now, that how people are coming to the US, it's almost the exact same one as the volcanoes and how they travel in the continent from from south to north or north to south. And they start like in Chile and they go to Peru and Ecuador and they start going all the way up to the Central America through Mexico into the Colorado and into the United States, Colorado and all the Colorado Rockies that are there. So all the volcanoes kind of come up. And I was like really curious about and very interested in how like that's exactly the same migration route, how people are kind of migrating up to the United States. So like, and then just the lava flow underneath it all, you know? So really thinking of like how everything is connected. Also like the migration of the butterflies that migrate from Michoacan all the way to United States is like similar migration. So, and then the history of the trade routes of Mesoamerica and all the ancient cultures that lived there, it was almost the same route, also going up and down. So like just thinking of the history of that and how the volcanoes kind of for me tie it all together. So working with volcanic rocks, it's been vital for me. Also, I found someone in one of these markets that was carving volcanic rocks. I was like, perfect. Um, and he's become also a really good friend for Miguel Angel is his name. He's really special, and he's like, I also didn't realize how spiritual it is to carve the rocks, and I learned from him, you know. Sometimes I go and work with him, and he's teaching me how if you actually the rock can get so hot that you can actually get a fever from it, and that's like
So
really
is volcanic
fascinating.
rock hard or is it soft? Does it take a
It
long time to carve?
it's considered, I mean, there's different types, you know, some of it is really soft and some of it is really hard. But the thing is it gets really hot when you're drilling or cutting or going into it, that if you didn't do it properly, there's heat says that there's energies in every rock. And these energies can actually get you sick and give you a fever. So spiritually, you have to protect yourself when you're carving onto the rock itself because you're releasing all the energy that's there. and it actually might get connected to you. So there's all these ways that he, physically is a physical, like, laborious kind of activity, but also energetically wise, you have to protect yourself when you're working with volcanic rocks. And I don't know, I found that to be so fascinating, how he takes care of himself, and just kind of reminds me with everything else that I'm doing, how it all ties in together.
Well, you
Yeah.
chose volcanic rock to make sculptures of backpacks, which must be a reference to, and children's backpacks. They're small. They're all different. Oddly, they look almost like heads when they're placed on the wall, one next to each other. And this seems to be a part of the migration story that you're telling in the gallery. Is that is that the case? Did you have a backpack similar to
Yeah,
this?
no, totally, totally. I remember I had a backpack when I was traveling by myself, and the only thing that I remember having that backpack was my notebook and my pencils. And actually, I always tell the story how I used to play Tripachuca, the game on the wall, which we're gonna get into in a minute. And I used to play a drawing game based on these kind of numbers from, like, this game from El Salvador. And I used to play this game with the people that I was staying with the coyote, the person that was bringing me here, to the families where I would end up staying. And that was my way to communicate with people, was through drawing. But the backpack was a big part of it. I don't remember. It's funny how I remember a lot of things, but I don't remember what my backpack looked like. I think I lost it along the way. I don't think I came all the way with it. But to think about, with the work that I've been doing at the church, helping the undocumented community over the last few years, I see people arrive here with a backpack, and they walk from as far as down as south, way down, anywhere from Venezuela to Ecuador, from Bolivia, from Chile, from whatever, with a backpack. And sometimes they make this journey by land, 2.5 to 3.5 months by land, coming with this, all you own, all your possessions. Um, and this is your life, and this backpack, the emotional weight and the physical weight of having to carry a backpack for like up to 4 or 5 months or whatever it is, and thinking of the weight of it, right? And I started, so I was like, okay, let me make these series of backpacks that carry this physical weight, but also the emotional weight, and also like the how it connects to the land that you're working on, because that migration route is the same as the volcanic like route in the actual, like, map, right? So yeah, it's thinking about all those things, and they're very simple, but they have a lot. To me, they have a lot of layers in what they signify for me.
They're very monumental for such small works. They're very um, solemn and iconic. Um, Maybe we could go back to the purple chair because I'd still like
Oh
to look
yeah,
at Ralphie and
yeah,
we're talking about the retablo on the purple chair, the
yeah.
disease
So
thrower, and your tribute to, oh, I think you can see the initials here, but your tribute to Ralphie. And I wonder if you can just speak a little bit about him and and how you came to make this.
yeah, no, okay, yeah. So Ralphie was he was a curan, like a, he was like a santero, like he was like this kind of practice santeria. He was a Puerto Rican santero who was my landlord, and I moved into an apartment actually in Newark, New Jersey, when I was 17, 18 years old. It was my first apartment, and I was like really excited. And he lived upstairs. I mean, I lived upstairs, and he had a store downstairs. And this is what the title talks about, but I'll go into more detail. So basically, it was a flower shop downstairs, in the storefront flower shop, but all the flowers were plastic and they were covered in dust. And I was just like, what are you selling? Like, you don't have real flowers here. So it was only the front of it, and there was a little cash register, and then there was this giant back room that no one was allowed to go in there. And I was always like, why did there's people going in and out of this place? And at first I thought they were selling drugs. I was like, what's he selling weed downstairs? What's going on? Like, and then eventually, like one day I went to pay the rent and I brought a check down and basically I heard like percussion instruments. Oh, they're having a party downstairs. I want to go party. And I went downstairs and everyone's dressed in white and there's doing a whole Santera ritual. You know, there's like all this smoke in the room. There's a couple chickens in the room, and everyone's dressed in white, percussion instruments, like 40 people in there going in a deep trance. And I was like, whoa, what is going on? And from behind me, Rafi sneaks behind me and covers my eyes. He goes, you didn't see anything? He escorts me out. And then after that, I couldn't stop asking him questions. And Ralphie was blind. And he was so powerful. And he actually had the most beautiful like deck of tarot cards that I ever seen because he had them custom made. They were made out of braille. They were like these off-white tarot cards made out of braille, and they were really worn from all the readings that he did. So for the first few years, the first, like, I don't know, for a long, I don't know how long, but it felt like I just kept asking him questions and he refused to say anything to me. He would just make jokes and just like brush it off like nothing. And, you know, I would spend more time in there looking at all the candles and all the agua florida that you see here on the left and all these kind of like things that he had in there. Fascinated by all the objects that he performed his own rituals with. And at some point, he goes, okay, and I asked him to do a reading for me, and he reluctantly did it. And he read my cards, and he says, this doesn't make any sense. I have to reshuffle. Again, he did it, and didn't make any sense. Like the same thing came up. And I was like, wait, what is it saying? And he goes, talking about war and all these things. And you grew up here, right? I was like, no. And then he's like, oh, wait. And then he started he broke it down, basically like my childhood, everything that I went through. He saw my future.
Amazing.
And he said, he told me, he gave me advice on how to prepare for what's coming. He says it's not going to be easy what's coming. And he told me it was really important for me to learn to control my fire because I have so much fire in my, you know, I guess my quadruple Sagittarius. Um, there's a lot of fire there. So he goes, you have to really learn to control the fire so you can grow from it. It can teach you. So that was like a really kind of important, and I was like 18, 19, I can remember. And then I really started listening to him and talking to him. And I was asking him questions, he was answering everything. He opened up this whole world for me about spirituality. Not necessarily about Santeria, I was asking him. I was talking about just like how spirituality works and how nature's connected to it, how we're all connected to it. And he just kind of really opened me up to like this whole new world. And it was like my first mentor that I had, you know. And then a couple years after that, I was really young. I went to a club and I came home super late and I had to go to work like in an hour. And, you know, this is what you do when you're that age. And I was getting ready to go to work and making a coffee, and I went downstairs and some of the people that worked there were there early. I was like, what are you guys doing here? He goes, you know what happened last night? And they said Ralphie passed away. And basically that night when I came home from the club, Ralphie woke me up in a dream and he was just slapping my face, making it's like, come on, you little drunk, get up. Like, you know, just making fun of me and being all silly with me. And I was like, wow, he woke me up this morning. And they were like, yeah, he came to say goodbye to you. So I was like, wow, that was like, I'll never forget that. I was deeply impacted by him and how he still manages to travel, you know, even after he passed away. And yeah, so he was like a very powerful, I guess, like person that I met in my life. And I think we'll all find those people. And I've been very fortunate to, you know, like I don't really look for these things. It just kind of happen, you know. I'm just very receptive because sometimes we have people enter our lives that we kind of dismiss or not really pay attention to them. And they're actually, you're supposed to be there for you for whatever reason. Even the really challenging people sometimes come to our lives and they help us grow and learn from them. Um, in this case, it was just like, wow, it was like a real mentor that I had. And I was just very curious. So I really learned a lot from him. But yeah, so this is one of the many examples. And I feel like I'm going to make more of these chairs for people that have really helped me become the person that I am now. So this was one of the first ones of the few more that I'm thinking about doing.
Wow.
Yeah.
And did you know at that time that you would become a healer, that you wanted
I
to
had
become a
no
healer?
idea. No, I mean, I was already making art. I was definitely an artist, but I was definitely very interested into into shamanism in that world for sure. I was already deeply invested into it, like learning and obsessed with it. Um, but yeah, that's what happened. And
And the other disease thrower, which, so, we don't talk about the gongs, the role that disease throwers play in your sound ceremonies. And I know you had one this morning and you have one tonight. But what is the
dirty.
role of sound in healing? There are gongs on each of these. And I know that the gongs are some of the things that you strike during the sound ceremony. But what is it about the gong and the sound that is healing? And is it healing to the body or the mind or both? Or, I mean, how does it work?
Okay, good question. So basically, even going back to El Brujo de Ocher about Ralphie, one of the things that was very obvious to me when I would go to these Santeria rituals, right, was the sound. I first, before I even walked into the room, the first time I was experienced it was here listening to the percussion instruments, and the power that they have. And I always talk about those that have attended my ceremonies. I talk about how sound as medicine is nothing new. Every continent, every ancient culture has used sound as medicine, right? One of Pempa, who's the Tibetan throat singers, that he's one of the team of sound healers that travels with me and does the healing work with me. He actually used to sing for the Dalai Lama, and he actually uses his throat as a vibrational instrument. And all the percussion instruments from Latin America and Africa, those are all sound as medicine as well. All the shamanistic singing, and the flutes and the rattles and so on, right? All sound as medicine. All the gongs from Asia sound as medicine. These particular gongs are related to the ones from Asia, but they're contemporary. The one in the Ralphie chair has the symbol of the moon, and that gong has the same sound frequency as the moon. NASA discovered that every planet has a vibrational sound frequency, and these gong makers in Europe and the US figured out you could put the sound frequency into this gong. So
Hmm.
we're playing that gong, you're actually feeling the same sound frequency as the moon, for example. So it's like very ancient, but also using contemporary to kind of push that further, right? So, and they all have different every gong is different, depending on their sound frequency and the metal that is used. Um, so like these kind of things are what we use for the ceremonies, but more equally as important, or probably even more important, actually, let me rephrase that, is the fact like who's playing the gong,
Hmm.
or the harmonica, or whatever, the concha, whatever we're using, because it's about the intention.
Hmm.
So before every ceremony, the sound healer, the sound healers that I'm working with, we have a little meditation meeting about intentions. And we talk about, like, even this morning before the cancer ceremony we did this morning, Daniel and I sat. Daniel's one of the sound healers, or the healers that I work with, and we sat and we talked of the intention of this group that's here. And we talk about what's happening in the world, what's happening politically all over, what's happening everywhere, right? And then we talk about, wow, can you imagine having cancer and going through what the world is going through right now? And just thinking about the intentions. And I started talking to him about, I mean, he knows my story and I know his story. He had cancer in his family as well. So um, it was like really important for us just to kind of come up with the intention. So when we're playing the instruments, harmonica, gong, conch shell, whatever, drum, Tibetan throat singer, whatever it is, voice, vocals, it's about the intentionality of what we're doing. Because anyone can hit the gong, it'll make a sound. But if
Mhm.
we're meditating, we're praying to the instrument, you are receiving the light from that we're gathering, because we're just a vessel and we're playing and we're meditating, we're sending this positive energy into the instrument, and that sound is translated over to the people that are there. And again, and this is something that is nothing new. This is an ancient medicine that's every continent has done it in different ways. I even talk about how, I've had cats in my life forever, and they actually are anyone out there has a kitten. I'm looking for a kitten right now, by the way. Just reach out to me. A very special kitten too, that is also a healer. So um I've I had cats in my life. So basically I've experienced how when I was feeling sick, the cat would sit on top of me, start knitting and purring. And I was like, wow, that's vibration right there. And automatically I felt better. So I feel like the sound as medicine can come from so many different ways. Sitting in front of the ocean and listening to the ocean waves is sound as medicine. That's why a lot of us like that's so relaxing to go sit in front of the ocean or
Mhm.
listening to a river stream. Like we sleep better if you sleep in a house that's close to water or to a river. Again, sound as medicine. So it not only comes from here, but it's naturally exists in the world, right? When you're sad or going through a really difficult time with a mental health, like you play your favorite song, automatically lifts you up. So again, sound as medicine can come from so many different things. And sound is also, I feel like, is underrated. As I guess in the visual arts world, but music is highly, really powerful. um but yeah, so this is what the sound comes from. And I'm actually this summer I'm working with Rare, which is a residency in Philadelphia that is located in a recycling center. For those artists that want to experience that, you should apply to that residency. It's kind of amazing.
In a
And I'm working
recycling
with,
center?
yeah, it's phenomenal. And I'm making my own gongs for the first time, and I'm making my own gongs out of recycled metals.
Hmm.
And so I'll be debuting my own gongs pretty soon.
Wow.
So that's a whole new thing because there's a whole science behind it, and it just like gets really complex. So we're bringing some professionals to help me and teach me how to do this thing. And we're gonna have a foundry. We're gonna melt the metal. We're gonna hammer them. We're gonna play them until they sound how I want them to sound. So we'll see what happens. It's a big
Wow.
experiment. I don't know what they're gonna look like either. So that's exciting.
Well, it sounds a little
Yeah.
bit like Socrates when you worked with metal for the first time, I think. But the
Yeah.
intentionality of the those involved is really interesting because I wondered why you had different kind of you sound ceremonies, a sound ceremony for the general public, a sound ceremony for cancer survivors, and a sound ceremony for those with broken hearts. And I thought, are they, what's the difference? What is it? A different kind of energy or focus? But it sounds like it is a different intentionality, kind of
Yeah,
amazing.
no, totally. And I think with the general audiences ones, they're the hardest because you get a room people with
Everything.
they're coming there
Hmm.
for different reasons. So there's sometimes people that are mourning that come, sometimes there's people that are going through a breakup, sometimes someone going through a difficult mental health crisis or whatever it is. I mean, you could have all that in the cancer ceremony as well. But it really helps us with our intentionalities when we're prepping. The
Right.
one with the broken hearts, that's gonna be the first one we're doing publicly. Anyone that's broke a divorce or has a broken heart, or has like problems letting go of a past love, like, come to the room. And also a big part of it is also like in the ancient traditions, like it was really important to heal together and heal in community.
Uh-huh.
So that's a big part of the work here.
Right.
Exactly here and what we're doing at the church as well. It's the same thing. It's coming together, being in the room together. Healing is, I tell people, you're not alone in this, Like I actually spoke to the cancer group today. I was like, cancer is really easy just to hide and be on your own, but we're together, we're healing together, like we're all going through this, we have gone through this. So it's really important to be around other people that have gone through similar things. um it's just
Yeah.
being in the room.
Well, let's look at some of the retablo paintings. Your last show focused on the trauma of your cancer and the generational and kind of the effect it has on generations of families. But this is about your migration story, and it's I'd like to, if we could, start with the little retablo about the drawing. I came to a sound ceremony a few weeks ago, and when I stood up, I found myself standing in front of this, and I was so amazed that you were speaking about your childhood when you were 6 years old, and that it involved um, this. It involved art in the middle, art making in the middle of a war. And I realized, of course, well, it reminded me that for children, children, life goes on, and there was just such a sweetness and innocence in the midst of this brutality, and it was just a really good reminder. But the idea that do you want to read it? Because or
Yeah, totally. Well, it says, when I was 6 years old in El Salvador, another boy told me that his cousin could draw better than me. Because he knew how to shade clouds. I was blown away with this new discovery. During this time of the Civil War, I remember having drawing get together with friends as we heard bullets in the distance.
I
Um,
love that idea of drawing get-togethers, by 6-year-olds. It was like, oh, wish that happened more
yeah.
today. Anyway,
Actually, I spent all this money on these pencils, and I'm gonna do drawing get-togethers here, my friends. So like, it feels funny that you brought this one up. I literally came from the art store right now.
wow. But I
Um,
love the fact that there's the image and there's the text and then there's the frame. I'm going to call it a frame. I'm using the word in the loosest
yeah,
sense
no,
of its
totally,
word.
totally.
But what relationship does the frame have to because you make the frame after the retablo returns to you, is that, or comes to you, is that right? I think there might be an image with the frame. Yeah, there we go.
Yeah. Yeah. So basically I have the retablo and I start building it. And I come back usually with the objects already. And I have all the objects laid out in the room. And I start seeing what objects that I have go with the works on the walls. And I start kind of mixing, matching. Sometimes I put things that don't work and I take it off. And it's like there's a whole process that goes into it. And the shape also. The shape of the retalos, they're very different, a little bit different. They're all very, I mean, they're different. So yeah, it all kind of connects to the way I want it to move and the energy that I want it to have. Yeah.
Yeah, and in this case, what kind of energy were you thinking of?
Yeah, I mean, I think I wanted it to almost be like, there's clouds in there. I was thinking I wanted it to be almost very light. I want to almost look like it's floating, like it's flying. There's like some wings of some robot in the bottom here on the right that you see highlighted there, and it looks like a weird insect. Um, yeah, so I was thinking about that a lot, and also like the big conch shell ears that it has.
Oh,
We usually
yeah,
put
so
conch
it's
shells
almost like a
like
face. Yeah.
it's almost, yeah, and then you have the conch shell. Like you think about the sound that it makes
Mm-hmm.
in referencing the sound of the bullets that's there as well. Um, yeah, so that's kind of like just intuitively starts to form like everything. Again, thinking of the energy and how everything flows. And this is the story, like when I was little, I was like really recognized for my drawing because apparently my mother said that I was drawing before I can talk.
Hmm.
Um, it took me a little bit of time to start talking, but I was already drawing. And then eventually I started to talk, but I was like drawing nonstop. Excuse me for that sound.
Wow. Maybe we could look at the Vicks Vapor Rub retablo, which I also, there we go.
Yep.
Um,
Okay, so I'll read this one. During the war, the neighborhood kids and I still kept playing outside with tons of caution. I think we actually fixed the tons of caution. Like you see, it was misspelled. That's what I was
you
mentioning
can still
earlier.
understand it.
When I used to come home at the end of the day, my mother and my grandmother would use Vicks Vaporub to heal me from the bruises, colds, bites, black and blues, head bumps, scratches, dog bites, stomach aches, headaches, and even I even saw a mechanic use it to fix his car instead of car oil.
That's not a good
Gracias por la
sign.
información. I don't know if it lasted very long, that car, but
So, first of all, you have these little glyphs at the top. Do those have any particular meaning? And the
yeah,
dots on the hand.
yeah, the glyphs on the top, they're just kind of the symbols that when your car has a like I guess a problem, those little symbols that light up.
Right. From the okay.
And the colors in the middle are the chakras, the healing chakras. And this is the skull of a dog that bit me. Because I used to be a bad little boy, used to throw rocks and at dogs and bees and everything. So I got
So
bitten a couple of times, but
one of the things I noticed is the mention of your mother, because at a certain point, your parents had to flee, leaving you behind. And so I just realized that that was the first reference to your mother in your childhood that I had ever seen, and then it was such a product that is very well known in the States and so ordinary, and but yet holds a kind of mysterious place in your life, the way it's being held, and the way it's somehow you make it very special. This ordinary thing very, very special. Another retablo I really wanted to look at is the one I mentioned, which is the January 1984 retablo. I noticed it for a couple of reasons. One is we looked at it a little earlier, but I noticed that the woman holding the glass triangle and hitting it to generate a sound is wearing this pink cloak. And it's the same pink cloak that all of the that appeared in your Socrates project during the sound baths, when everyone who all of the people in the sound ceremony wore these, and I was really wondering about the significance of that. There is an image showing somebody wearing one of the pink cloaks, and it just made the whole event even more magical and otherworldly. So I was wondering if you could talk about the significance of this pink cloak here at Socrates and also in your retablo.
Absolutely. Yeah. No, so some, the healers that I work with are, I feel like they're dear friends of mine now. Like we've done hundreds of ceremonies together at this point. And we continue to grow together, and ceremonies are challenging. We feels like we've grown so much together. I genuinely love them. And to me, like when we're doing these ceremonies, I'm like really deep into it, and they protect me and I protect them. I feel like they're already their ancestors of mine that would take care of me. But they're living and they're young and they're strong. So I see them that way now after so much time and so many of these challenges and all the things that we've gone through. Yeah, so I feel like they've become my guardians at this point, like these protectors, these ancient like healers, that they already are, and they're just getting stronger as we're going forward, especially with their own practices, of course. So when I made that retablo, I actually pretty much placed one of them as an ancestor that was protecting me before I took my journey. Um, when I first started my journey. Yeah, so this I'm not gonna read it because it's too small, but I'll tell the story. So basically, this I was giving just a very 1 second, sorry about this. Someone's drilling, someone's drilling very close to me, but it's okay. Um, okay, I'll just talk through it because I don't know what they're doing. Um, so basically, I was given like 10 minutes to say goodbye to my friends. And I was 8 years old, and I was caught off guard, and they just came to get me. Someone came, they were like, "You got 10 minutes to say goodbye to everyone and get your things, and you're going to go see your mom." And I was just super excited, and I had no idea I was going to take 2.5 months. Um, it was kind of one of these things, and I hadn't seen my mother in 2 years. I hadn't seen my father in 4 years, and I was just super excited to be. My sister had already left too, like a couple months prior. She went by air, so she had a different experience than me. But it was like really kind of yeah, it was just kind of like a really interesting kind of situation I was in. Now that I like reflect back on, that I had 10 minutes to say goodbye to my friends, and a lot of them weren't around. I didn't get to say goodbye to some of my best friends because they were just in school or whatever. Um, and I just remember it was like 3 p.m., like in the afternoon, and I got my bag and just went. And I started this journey. And we went directly to Honduras. That's the first part. And when we got to Honduras, there was a whole encampment of people that had escaped the war. And the war had really intensified, that people were everywhere, escaping El Salvador and coming to the US. But yeah, so that's what this retablo talks about. In the retablo, it's like I envision this uh someone. I felt protected, from my whole experience. I feel very protected from my whole experience. So I was like, what's the best way to portray one of the ancestors or my guides that protect me? And it's one of the sound healers. I was thinking, oh, I feel like they're protecting me now, and I'm protecting them as we're doing all this healing work all over the world, I guess now.
Well,
But yeah,
you also have the hammocks hanging above. Are those also references to ancestors?
yeah.
And
So
with a
there's also
parrot.
hammock. Yeah, so there's a hammock in the show right now. I think we have a picture of the hammock in the back room. And basically, I started doing this, I guess, in the Brooklyn Museum show that we did together, Eugenie,
Mhm.
and I started putting a hammock on top of the deceased drawer to actually have a place for the ancestors to take a break and rest.
Oh,
Um, especially during this ceremony. So when we're activating the show, the ancestors can take a little break because we got it for the hour. Everyone in the room is protected. Give them a little break. So that hammock is intended for the ancestors to break when the ceremonies are happening. Anyone's ancestor that's
the
there, they could
break.
all hang out there. So that's what a lot of the hammocks represents in my work.
Um, there's some other, I just want to take, I realized we should probably turn toward the back wall of the gallery and look at Tripachuca, but I did want to comment on this room and also the first gallery. When you do an exhibition, the space it's in, you create almost a cosmology in that exhibition. I mean, I'm looking at the black border around the top and wondering what that is. And also, there seems to be a white light that echoes the shape of the room in this gallery and also in the front. I'm wondering if you can comment on that before we get to the
Yeah.
Tripachuca wall and also the reading of the retablo.
Okay. Yeah. I mean, the light is just the light of the gallery. So that, I
It
mean, it's
works so
very,
well.
yeah, no, no. Yeah. I love that light in the gallery. But so the drawing on the top of, they're actually upside down, like shapes of waves of water. Um, And also, I mean, the water signifies a lot of different things for me. Like I've had two drowning experiences, and it's still like one of the things I still have to heal is confront the ocean, and I'm in the process. Last year I actually went in the ocean when I was in Brazil by myself with no one around at 6 in the morning, and I made peace with the ocean. And that's a big step going forward for me. I spent like 2 hours in the water by myself. It was like really kind
Wow.
of important of the healing. Um, and also we're 60-70% water, and the water in our bodies was really absorbing all the sound and all the vibration that we have. So I was thinking of, I wanted the water to be present in the space, so I put it upside down in on the top of the whole exhibition. And also there's like a sound plane, and the sound is it carries through the ceiling because the speakers are high. So I felt like I wanted the sound in the water to be kind of on the top.
Amazing. I also noticed your retablo paintings, the frames, again, frames in quotes, they're getting, and you can see it on the right side, they're getting more and more assertive and moving off the wall
Mm.
into the space in an architectural way. And I know I mentioned this to you after the sound ceremony, and you laughed and you said, "Oh, I'm thinking of doing a temple." And can you elaborate on that?
The
Is that
temple?
a temple, a shrine? Is that something you're really thinking of
Yeah.
doing?
No, I have it all. I have a whole plan already. I just get someone to finance it. That's all I need. Basically, I have this dream, with, it's really influenced by the church, where I've been doing all the volunteer work, and I do all the healing work and all the activism and all the fundraising, all that stuff that I do there. Um, and like, I was thinking there's maybe there's a few spaces in New York. I don't know any where this kind of thing happens, that does not connected to religion, right? That can be a space for healing, a space for meditation, a space that can help different communities during crisis.
Mm,
A place that can also be kind of like a contemporary temple without following any kind of like religion or I don't know, like depend on the government for funding or these kind of things, and just be free to do what the space needs to do, like I don't know, what if we have another COVID outbreak and we actually turn
mhm.
that space into a food distribution center, right?
Right, right.
Can it generate its own money? And I was like,
Mm,
wow, I can kind of envision making like a cathedral style space with my materials that we can charge tourists to come and see it, and I can fund it. And I want to hire artists and healers to run the space, and I want them to get good pay and full benefits, of course, and then provide like every Friday, like, or a specific day in the week, and we do sound ceremonies for free for anyone that wants to attend. Um, so I want it to be multifunctional, but also I want it to be this spectacle, like this visual spectacle, like those
wow.
cathedrals in Latin America and Europe that are just gigantic things. Um, and 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 I want the pastor to quit his job and come run it. The pastor that I work with, Juan
You
Carlos,
mean the
to just
pastor
come
of
and run it.
the Lutheran Church of the Good Shepherd?
Yeah, I want him to quit. They just whatever he's doing and come work and take over the church because he'll be
Yeah.
perfect for it.
Well, you're so amazing, Guadalupe, because one of the things I admire about your practice is the way, I mean, what we see in the galleries and museums is just a small part of a much, much larger practice and vision that encompasses many different
Any
communities.
different. And there's also, don't forget, there's also 50 cats that are going to be involved in
And the
this whole
50
thing.
cats, a
There's
cat
50 cats,
sanctuary.
the cat sanctuary, and then during the sunrise, the cats can sit on everyone and just purr and just work on them. And that's their job.
Um, okay, I think we're now going to look at this final retablo, and I don't know.
Yeah,
I hope you can read it.
I have it here. I have it
Okay.
here. Yeah. So this retablo, um, so I'll just read it and then we'll just talk about it if you want. Okay, so it says, to those children experiencing war, I hope to meet you in the future and hug you. In the future, I hope you're receiving and inspiring love in your communities, that you're healing, that you form a new family, that you become leaders, that you're saving the trees and the oceans, that you find a cure for cancer, that you solve many of the world's problems that we caused, that you show us and teach us about what humanity is supposed to be because we lost that. I have failed you, America has failed you, and the world has failed you. You are my family. You will always be in my heart. I'll see you in the future. Guadalupe Maravilla.
Thank you
Yeah,
for that.
yeah.
Well, I think we should probably, I feel like a moment of silence before questions, but thank you so much, Guadalupe, for sharing so generously and for your totally singular vision.
Thank
Your
you.
generosity. Yeah, amazing. I'm always so optimistic and uplifted after speaking to you and seeing your work.
Wow. That was so beautiful, Guadalupe. Thank you so much for
Thank you.
including the dialogue. And Eugenie, it was really, really lovely to hear the two of you in conversation. Thank you both so, so much for that. We have a couple of questions, if you'll have them, Guadalupe. The first one is going to be from Gino. Gino, I'll give you the chance to unmute.
Thank you, and thank you, Guadalupe. Good to see you. Great
Thank
talk as always. I wanted to ask about your relationship to syncretism. Throughout a lot of your works, you referred to various practices across Latin America and even talked about collaborating with healers and artists outside of Latin America. And I was curious about how you see like the relationship between all of these in your own work. Do you see these as like a syncretism of sorts, like a new practice like that's developing, that's forming through these sculptures, an archive of these traditions kind of conglomerated together, or a new development entirely that's different from those?
Yeah, no, hey Gino, good to see you. Good question. Thinking about, like I think, well, my work is really influenced from a lot of different sources, you know, and I feel like, especially like the really ancient cultures of the Maya, like I grew up playing in those pyramids in El Salvador, those pre-Columbian kind of pyramids that are there, and really thinking a lot about how I can learn from them as opposed to just trying to replicate what they did, right? It's like how do I because I live in New York City, most of my life. So how do I combine this kind of my ancestors with what's happening now? So I always believe that my work is about really creating new mythologies based on who I am as a person, what I've experienced, and where I come from and where I'm at. So it's never just like, oh, I'm just gonna just draw this pyramid in the wall in the gallery, right? But it is about, yeah, maybe I'll put a pyramid in the gallery, but I'll put like make it out of like, Maseca bags, the cornflower bags, or like put a boom box on it or whatever, a Nike sneaker that I wore, or whatever it is, right? So it's like, how do I make it mine? How do I make it my own that it reflects to my story, right? So creating, I would say I'm creating new mythologies with everything that I'm doing, because I just like everything's coming together. Even me as a mestizo, like I have, it's just like this whole thing. It's just like a mix of so many different things that form who I am, and I think my work is does the same. It comes from everywhere. And yeah, like where I come from is really important, but also my experiences in New York, my life here, and my growing up here and being a Afro kind of gothic vampire in my early late 20s, like in the late teens, I mean, in New York City, having that lifestyle there. And I'm actually thinking about doing a whole show about my gothic life too at some point. So, that's like that's super interesting. Like it's just like all that kind of comes together at some point. But yeah.
Thank you so much, Gino, for that question. That was a great question. And thank you, Guadalupe, for that answer. I'll ask the last question today. Guadalupe, I'm curious to hear about how you think about your hand in the process of making your artworks, but also in our role in experiencing them. I've been reflecting on this for something I'm working on right now, and I couldn't help but think about it, or think about your practice as this act of holding hands with other makers and sort of always reaching out with your hand towards somewhere or someone else. But I'm curious how you think about your practice relative to your own work as a creator and your hands, especially.
Hmm. The hand, um, I feel like even though sometimes I'm not making things, my hands everywhere, because I'm the author. Um, and I always talk, like it's like really, when an architect designs a building, just because the architect didn't put screws on it doesn't mean it's not his building, So it's just like really thinking about the authorship. It's really what I see is as the hand, the ideas. So I feel that like in that aspect, the hand is it's everywhere. But as far as the healing work too, like the hand is like a whole, it feels like very different than the art, the maker, because yeah, the long studio hours, the hundreds of thousands of studio hours that I put in there all my life in the studio, that hand is always present, even though you don't see it sometimes, just because I always tell younger artists, it's like you need to put hundreds of thousands of hours in the studio, even you don't feel like you're wasting your time. Like all those failed attempts and all these failed pieces that I did as an emerging artist as a kid, they're never a failure because they taught me what not to do sometimes. They taught me to become more my practice to be more refined as I grew older. And to be honest too, like I feel like I didn't fully hit on what I wanted until I turned 40. I felt like then it's where I felt like my all the hard work that I've been doing for 40 years finally came together. It's always like, okay, I'm a better sculptor than like a person that draws or whatever, like just whatever, like videos, like sound, like so many things I was exploring with that. I feel like once I hit 40 years old, everything just came together. But it was just like after hundreds of thousands of hours in the studio, like finally came together for me. And also with my life experience and my lived experience, like all these things, finally everything came together. But it took me a long time. And, I guess like I feel like it's part of the process, but the hand is always part of it. And then as far as the healing work, it's the same thing, it's just like that also comes from experience. And I always talk to the emerging artists is like when I used to teach, it was like really important to be like, there's no rush. This is not a race, this is like a life's journey. You're an artist, like there's no rush. I took a 8 year period of time where I didn't show anyone my work when I was in my 20s. I just got a studio in Brooklyn and I was just going to every opening. I was reading everything. I was going to every show, watching every film, that independent film that was out, every foreign film. And I was just absorbing. And everyone was like, can I go to the studio? It's like, no, it's like private, sorry. And I didn't show anyone my work. I was just kind of working through it. I was putting a lot of hours in there. I'm not rushing to go to have a show. Like I need to be on my own, put in the hours in the studio. And it was so beautiful and so good not to show anyone my practice and just grow on my own. And then when I came out of there, I applied to grad school, but it was just like really kind of a point where I tell artists is like, this is not a race. Like, this is not take your time. The more time you take with your practice, the better you'll understand it. Because then once you're exhibiting, it's like, then you're like, I don't know, there's pressure all of a sudden. Um, and I talk also about like, there's no such thing as an art emergency. I don't get stressed out about art. It's just like, there's real issues in the world, as we know, that stuff in health and in the world and politics and all these things that are more serious. People that are hungry in the streets, people that are cold. And let's get stressed out about that. I mean, we still try not to, but it's really important to really, like, our art is our outlet. You know, this is actually a way for me to get away from everything that's happening outside of here. So like it's, again, going back to the hand, you know, it's like really excuse me for the drilling. It's a long making. It's a long hole that they're making downstairs. But yeah, I don't know if that answers your question, but
That was beautiful. Thank you so, so much. And thank you again to you and to Eugenie for this conversation today, which has been so beautiful and such a pleasure to listen to. We're going to conclude today with some sounds. Do you want to say anything about them before I play them, Guadalupe?
yeah. So totally. So sorry about this. There's sound happening right here too. I can talk about that if you want.
We can't hear it. It's probably very
Oh,
distracting,
really?
but Zoom is
Oh, wow.
like,
It's like loud drilling happening like downstairs or up
yeah.
next door. I don't know, but basically at the exhibition, if you were to walk in, you hear all types of sounds. Like there's some flutes, there's a harmonica that I played, there is a sound bath that we did with the Tibetan throat singer, where my bus Mariposa Relámpago is being activated. So those are the sounds. So basically, I've been doing a lot of like flute recordings of live performance, like live ceremonies over the last year and a half, with a sound engineer that goes and sets up his equipment and records. And then we actually got these mastered. And eventually I'm thinking of making a vinyl out of these recordings. And there's more. So this is the sound that you're listening to when you walk into the space. And here in particular, we'll have some flutes. And this is it's a great healer that I need to work with more, like during the live ceremonies. Um, and his name is Jordan, and AKA El Duende. So this is his flute playing, and actually he was actually present when I found out I had cancer during a ceremony that I did. So that it's coming from him is really kind of important. So we can listen to that now.
Wow. That was so beautiful. Thank you so much, Guadalupe. Thank you, Eugenie. Thank you to Ella and the team at PPOW. Thank you to Mariana at Guadalupe Studio, who was so helpful in pulling everything together for this event today. Thank you to the team at PPOW for all the beautiful images that we had to look at today. And thank you to the Terra Foundation for American Art, who sponsor our new social environment program and make daily conversations like this one possible. They also support our archive, which you can view on the Rails YouTube channel. The Rail has been free and independent for 23 years. A donation directly supports our staff and our operations. You can support our work through the link in the chat. And if you're available tomorrow at 1 p.m., join us for a conversation between Julianne Swartz and Will Corwin on the occasion of tenderness at Bienvenue Steinberg and Jay. And as is tradition, you all can now turn on your microphones and say hello and goodbye as you leave. Thank you so, so much. And thank you again to Guadalupe and to Eugenie.
Thank you
Thank you so much.
Thank you,
Did a great
everyone.
job.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Guadalupe.
Everybody.
Thank you, Guadalupe.
Jeannie.
Thank you, Eugenie.